Good afternoon, fellow patriots. This is Matt Shea, and welcome to Patriot Radio, broadcasting live from deep inside the heart of the future Liberty State. Brought to you once again by On Fire Ministries, in the legacy of Dr. Stan Monteith, bringing you the story behind the story and the news behind the news, where it's not about right or left, it's about right and wrong. It's about our hope not being in man, but in Jesus Christ. About not ending in prayer, but moving to action. Your kingdom come, your will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Father, deliver us from the evil one.
Welcome to Patriot Radio.
This is Matt Shea, and welcome to Patriot Radio. Today, instability. A coup, maybe even, in South Korea. And the new ground zero in the Middle East, Syria. On top of some fresh revelations and one good withdrawal of a nominee from earlier this week by President Trump. Also today, we have on the show Chad Stewart, the author of Britfield. We're going to be talking about AI and the rest of it going forward and what it looks like here in the next few weeks. Until January 20th, so many things in the world all of a sudden got very, very unstable, even more than they were. But that's why you are watching and listening to Patriot Radio, because we bring you the news so that you have it before everybody else, and you can be prepared with your family for the times that are ahead, indeed the times that are already upon us. And so follow us on Telegram, Patriot Radio US, for real-time intelligence analysis and breaking news on Telegram. And also you can subscribe to us on Rumble. And thank you to everybody that is joining us now. We are on Patriot TV. Please check out all of those that are advertising on Patriot TV, because that's how we keep the money in the kingdom. That's how we keep growing freedom. That's how we keep growing the outreach of real media here in the United States of America. Now, our encouraging word from the Word today is from Hebrews chapter 5, verse 13. And before I get into this, a lot of people will quote this verse, but just the first part of it. It's important that we don't divorce the Word of God from the Spirit, and that we don't divorce the Spirit from the Word. And there's some people that want to walk a Christian life where the Word of God just doesn't mean what it says. We have to be very, very careful with that. And I think Hebrews specifically addresses this in chapter 5, and that's why I believe it's for our time right now, because there's so many things that we need to be discerning. And that's why Paul, who was dealing with the same things at that time, said this: "For everyone who partakes only of milk is unacquainted with the word of righteousness, for he is an infant." In other words, basic Christianity. "But solid food is for the mature, who because of practice have their senses trained to distinguish between good and evil." So the discerning of spirits is not just a spiritual gift, but also the Word of God helps us to discern good from evil. And I've always found that when you bring up an issue where there is black and white, good and evil, you have people that will ignore the plain, direct Word of God. And in the next few months, we're going to see a lot of evil being exposed. Some of it, unfortunately, inside the church. And as that happens, measure it with the Word of God. And when you do that, it gives you greater discernment, because the Word is practice. In other words, you've got to keep doing it. And as you do, it will help bring you through perilous times. And that brings us now to your daily intelligence briefing from the globalist front.
The future is built by us. We have the means to make progress on the global agenda.
at least one very wealthy man, in this case Elon Musk, has figured out that extreme birth rate collapse is the biggest danger to human civilization by far. But the corollary to that is this was all by design. The idea of planning things like parenthood, planning, well, to kill children, planning to make two-person families the norm. In fact, they actually have a word for that. Bill Jasper was bringing that up here a couple of weeks ago. Why did this all happen? Because there was a concerted narrative for people to stop having kids, or to make it so hard for them to keep their children that they would give up, and to also make it the norm for virtueless society. When I say virtueless society, that means there was an attack on the fundamental morals of the United States of America and Western civilization. And so when that happened, it created chaos, it created single-parent families, and it was by design, all of it to collapse the birth rate in civilization. And that's because it's part of the enemy's grand scheme. And the enemy's grand scheme is that there not be enough temples of the Holy Spirit. They've given their lives to Jesus, full of the Holy Spirit, to counter what the enemy is doing. Fairly simple concept if you think about it. And that brings us now to the China front. The U.S. Secretary of State has been briefed on the ongoing situation in South Korea. If you did not hear, earlier this morning, martial law was declared by the South Korean president, and the military backed the president and said they would uphold martial law, even though Parliament voted to lift martial law. Now, 110 delegates were not present. They had boycotted, but 190-0 is what the vote was to lift martial law. That said, the United States has confirmed, reporting that the United States was not notified prior to this happening. It was based on an emergency meeting last night between South Korea's president, military leaders, and presumably intelligence leaders. No threat assessment to offer that might indicate a specific threat from North Koreans might have induced the South Korean president's decision was confirmed. That said, this is extremely odd, what happened there. And in the wake of it, South Korea's president said he will lift martial law at the next cabinet meeting. His own party urged him to drop martial law order. But again, you're not going to do this just off the cuff. Now, some people are saying this is just a stupid political move. He was just trying to prevent an investigation regarding corruption. Other people have said, and I think rightfully so, that the left in South Korea was preventing South Korea from adequately defending the country against a possible Chinese invasion of Taiwan and then a subsequent North Korean invasion of South Korea, especially in light of the fact that North Korea has now ferried arms to Russia in the Ukraine-Russia war. So more is going to come out about this, and we don't know everything right now, but to have an emergency meeting and then suddenly this from last night, and then the military backing, well, South Korea is very unstable, and there is a sensitivity to North Korean provocations, especially here in the last 60 days. Adding to that, and the fact that the leftists are weighing in here, similar to how this happened in Israel, by the way, South Korea's largest labor union announces a general strike demanding President Yoon's resignation. Now, if he had a legitimate reason and threat to the country, then it would appear that they would be undermining or part of something that's going on regarding China. Otherwise, this was just a corruption, a foolhardy decision to cover up corruption scandal. South Korean opposition coalition announces intent to impeach the president after this declaration of martial law. And just to be very clear, there have been no changes to the force posture of U.S. forces in Korea, according to Pentagon Press Secretary Major General Pat Ryder. Going to be really interesting to see what happens, because this went underreported and happened in the last 48 hours. A Russian submarine surfaced in the Philippines exclusive economic zone for authorities in Manila. The submarine was sighted 80 nautical miles off the coast of Occidental Mindoro. And the reason, actually, this was a little bit, looks like it was about 4 days ago. The reason this is important is it's not just China now in Philippine waters. It is also Russia. China bans export of gallium, germanium, antimony to the United States. Most of you would not know what those are for. Some of you do. They're key chip-making components, and China is responding to the chip industry restrictions on China announced by the United States yesterday. China will ban exports of dual-use items related to these things to the United States with immediate effect, its Commerce Ministry said. Also, there is a new export control list of 700 dual-use items, including critical metals and electronic parts, that will impact not just U.S. chip manufacturers, but also defense industries. Now, the United States used to be one of the largest exporters and generators of rare earth minerals. So it looks like we are going to have to take up that very quickly so that we do not get defeated or attacked by China. Also, 41-year-old Shenghua Wen also admitted to working on behalf of the North Korean government to try and obtain military uniforms to help disguise himself and others against South Korea in a possible surprise attack. FBI agents noted that they recovered 50,000 rounds of ammunition from Wen's car, a chemical threat detector, and a tool used to find hidden surveillance devices. In 2012, under the Obama administration, Shenghua Wen made his way into the United States on a student visa and clearly was spying for the North Koreans. They managed to send him $2 million to purchase equipment over 12 years inside the United States of America. This is proof positive of what we've been talking about here on Patriot Radio, and that is that there are agents of foreign powers inside the United States of America stockpiling equipment for possible future use in a world war. And that brings us now to the Middle East front. Syrian rebels have launched flanking attacks on an operational level outside of Hama City, bypassing the Syrian army's defenses. Now, if you have not understood what's going on in Syria, there has been a massive sweep of Al-Qaeda, ISIS, Turkish-backed rebels south. The U.S.-backed forces, primarily Kurdish, are attacking from the east. And those same Al-Qaeda elements, the Turkish-backed elements, are now attacking the Kurds, while at the same time attacking President Assad's forces in the south. Now, yes, it's a mess there, and there really aren't a lot of good players, if any at all. What I find very interesting is it does look like the Syrian rebels are going to take Hama City and continue south toward the capital of Damascus. Why is that important? Because if the rebels get south of Homs, that means that the Russian and Iranian bases on the Mediterranean would be cut off and potentially overrun, which explains why Russia flexes its muscles in the eastern Mediterranean by test firing missiles as the rebels move farther south. In addition to that, and to complicate matters even more, the United States, during an airstrike, killed 6 members of the Syrian Republican Guard, in other words, Assad's forces, outside of the Deir ez-Zor military airport in eastern Syria. Now the United States has attacked Syrian forces proper, not just rebel forces. In addition to that, a large military convoy of Turkish-backed SNA rebels have left northern Aleppo and are headed headed toward Manbij, that are trying to take that city from Kurdish SDF fighters, the ones backed by the United States. So this is a gigantic mess where you have a NATO member, Turkey, backing opposition that the United States is also fighting against. Syrian front lines do remain dynamic. And here's a great map of what has been happening. You can see on the left side of the map the city of Latakia on the coast, and also Tartus. These are major Russian and Iranian bases in these areas, and you can see why they're going south from Hama toward Homs, because once they get down there, they will be able to cut those bases off from the interior of the country. And you see Damascus much, much farther south. Many times people ask me, who do you support in such conflicts? Syria is a mess. The Ukraine-Russia war, it's a mess. Who do you support? And I will always answer, I support the Christians on the ground. And one example of that right now is the Christian resistance of the church that is of Antiochian Greek heritage, which is holding strong against these jihadist forces coming south. And while the situation is intensifying, these churches form militias to defend their churches against the jihadists, and they are actually having success in that defense. So if you want to pray for anybody, pray for the Christians in Syria. Also, Israeli Defense Forces have reported and taken responsibility for an airstrike near Damascus that killed Salman Juma, a senior Hezbollah operative and liaison with the Syrian army. He facilitated weapons transfers from Syria to Hezbollah and maintained ties with Syrian officials. Longtime member of Hezbollah, taken out by the Israelis today. So it does look like the war is shifting clearly into the Syrian theater. And that brings us now to our break. And when we come back, what's happening on the Russia front and the national front.
Hey folks, it's your buddy John Rich here and co-founder of Old Glory Bank. Let me ask you a question. Why would you trust your banking with people that hate you? Well, you shouldn't. We're building a freedom economy, and now we have a pro-America bank. It's called Old Glory Bank. Check it out at oldglorybank.com and open yourself an account today.
Old Glory Bank is a full-service, FDIC-insured online bank with business and consumer banking and customers in all 50 states. It takes just 8 minutes to open an account at oldglorybank.com.
The Donor Deck represents a groundbreaking independent crowdfunding initiative driven by patriots like you to bring back our esteemed President Donald J. Trump to office. With unwavering passion, we pledge all profits from the sale to MAGA Inc. and Fight Like a Flynn PAC. The exquisitely detailed challenge coin is a timeless collectible to be passed down to generations. It symbolizes your continuous dedication to assisting President Trump in his quest to rejuvenate America to its former greatness. Get your Donor Deck now. Go to the Patriot.tv store and click on Donor Deck. Enjoy the magnificent artwork and scripture on each playing card, knowing our appreciation for your continuous dedication to assisting President Trump in his quest to rejuvenate America to its former greatness. You'll get this keepsake collectible challenge coin acknowledging your support for Donald Trump's run back to the White House, and the Donor Deck of 52 exquisite playing cards, plus a beautiful display case to show your challenge coin. Go to the Patriot.tv store and get your Donor Deck now.
And now the Russia front. Norway has announced it will send F-35s and air defense systems to Poland to guard NATO's eastern flank, which includes Norway sending troops to Poland. This is pretty incredible, actually, knowing the histories of those countries. But now one common concern, and that is Russia. Georgian riot police moved toward pro-EU protesters, and this has been happening for the last 6 days straight. A lot of footage coming out of there, but Georgian riot police have been using strobe lights against pro-EU protesters in recent days. In response, the protesters are now bringing speakers to play some music and green lasers for visual effects, I suspect also to distract the troops. Also from France, a no-confidence vote draws France into a political crisis. Opposition lawmakers vowed to topple the minority government of Prime Minister Michael Barnier in a no-confidence vote after just 3 months in office. A standoff over an austerity budget, which has caused jitters on financial markets, follows months of tension since President Emmanuel Macron appointed the 73-year-old in September. A little bit of instability in France. What you don't know there probably is that the far left and the moderates have formed a coalition, which is typical. I mean, moderates in the Republican Party always try to form a coalition with the far left to destroy true conservatives and those that love their country. We're seeing this happen in France, but this is also happening throughout the rest of Europe, particularly in Western Europe. And we'll keep our eyes on that, especially as Trump is inaugurated and brought in as president of the United States. DA Fani Willis has been ordered to release all communications between her team, Jack Smith, and the sham J6 committee. It's going to be very, very fascinating to see what this reveals. Very fascinating, especially in light of President Biden's pardon of his son, Hunter Biden. Probably one of the worst picks Trump has made was Hillsborough County, Florida Sheriff Chad Chronister for DEA. Well, he has now, as of today, withdrawn his name from consideration as DEA administrator. This comes after massive pushback over him arresting a pastor for holding services during COVID. I want to stop there for a second. When the church stands up, things change. The fact that this guy arrested a pastor for doing exactly what he was supposed to be doing, holding a worship service, encouraging people during a difficult time in America, yeah, he disqualified himself, and now he's removed himself because Christians were vocal. Laura Loomer, in an exclusive, has uncovered photos of the pro-Black Lives Matter lesbian wife of Daphne Yoren, the radical left prosecutor in Daniel Penny's trial in New York, projecting messages that say Black Lives Matter onto courthouses in New York City. In other words, as the jury deliberates in the Daniel Penny case, is this not something that would show a conflict of interest? Trump is slated to travel to Paris, France to attend the reopening of the Notre Dame Cathedral after its restoration from damage caused by a massive fire. I got to tell you, everybody, there's something about this I don't like. I don't know what it is. Bookmark this. There's something about this trip that I really don't like. Is he going to have United States Air Force escort? He better. Clearly, he's got Secret Service and much better Secret Service than he had before, and much more robust protection than he had before. But there's something about this I really, really don't like. And I think this is a prayer point for all of us as Christians as Trump goes overseas. Trump, he kind of, in a joking manner anyway, humiliated the Canadian Prime Minister. What if we just took over Canada and you got to be governor of the 51st state? Anyway, I don't know if you know this or not, but the United States actually tried to invade Canada and annex it from the British. And so they were having banter back and forth. The bottom line is, looks like Canadian Prime Minister is backing off some of the hard talk that happened in the past after Trump warned him of tariffs. Debanking alarm sounded. Feds running secret program to spy on your money. A new report from the Institute for Justice is warning Americans that their banks and the federal government secretly are spying on their money, their spending habits, their banking habits, and more. And with the punishment up to and including closing their accounts if the owner strays from what the government approves. This is something Donald Trump needs to address very quickly in his administration, that banks don't have that right to violate people's privacy as an effective arm of the federal government, violate the Fourth Amendment, but then claim they're only a private entity. Can't be both. They're acting as an arm of the federal government. In one capacity, they need to abide by the Constitution of the United States. Also, and very, very good news here, I love the way they're setting up the Department of Government Efficiency. The final step of the Department of Government Efficiency is to delete itself, according to Elon Musk. Most government projects should come with an expiry date. That is why we set one for the Department of Government Efficiency, July 4th, 2026, on the 250th anniversary of the United States. I love that. Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy are also reportedly considering ending daylight savings time as part of the Department of Government Efficiency's programs. And I got to tell you something. I introduced this when I was in the legislature to get rid of this and actually to go to standard time. Amen. This is ridiculous. I don't know why this is still going on. It doesn't make any sense. And it seems like it has been really hard, even with testimony of people having heart attacks there was an increase in heart attacks on these days. And some people said that that wasn't true, even though there was testimony before the legislature that it was true. Get rid of it. Make things simple. Get rid of daylight savings time. Go to standard time. And a shift is happening around the world as a power crisis. Now, again, back in 2018, I talked about this, that if we continued with the green energy push, we were not going to have enough power generation to support it. Baseload power comes from two primary sources. The first and the best baseload power is from hydroelectric power. The second from nuclear power. Now, some might argue nuclear is better. Just for the sake of this, those two are great baseload power. In other words, it means they generate power consistently regardless of the atmospheric and environmental and weather conditions outside. That said, when they went to wind and they went to solar, those are dependent on atmospheric conditions and environmental conditions and weather conditions. And so inherently, it creates a flaw in the system. Many countries now are saying we've got to go to nuclear power. And years ago, a great friend of mine who is from the Tri-Cities area, Larry Haler, told me about small modular nuclear reactors. And now it's coming to the fore finally. If we could put that graphic up. Small modular nuclear reactors are really the medium nuclear reactors that would be needed for like a major industrial area. Could be major residential areas, 20 to 300 megawatts. They can be adjusted. But the fact of the matter is they can operate and reuse and consume spent fuel from other reactors. And they use liquid metals, sodium or lead as a coolant. So this is the future right here. If you combine this with hydrogen fuel cell technology and recombination technology, which is kind of like a car alternator, recapturing some of the energy lost in the process of electrolysis, in other words, splitting water into oxygen and hydrogen, you could quite literally have fuel cells outside of a house and never lose power even during the worst storms because you don't have power lines anymore. Because the power lines that do exist are underground or the power is being generated right at a house. So between these two technologies, that's the future. And Donald Trump is going to jump on some of this because we need to get ahead of this power crisis where we're going to fall short as early as next year in power generation. That should never happen. By the way, we should never take out power generating dams either. It's all part of a plan to try to control you and me. So if you don't know about small modular nuclear reactors, go check out that graphic. It's fantastic. And do your own research. There's been a lot of scare about nuclear power. It's just simply not true. And last but not least, a great post here. Something that we need to make a part of our psyche. Don't make peace with evil, destroy it. It's so important today that as evil is being exposed, people need to be held accountable. We don't need to let evil come in, but also as the church, as Christians, we need to engage in spiritual warfare and realize that when the church stands up, evil flees. And that is the briefing. Remember, the antidote to dependency and socialism is to be a God-fearing, self-reliant, freedom-loving American. Thank you, everybody, for just the huge shares and likes that are happening with Patriot Radio right now. It's amazing. And a special announcement. We have Patriot Radio merch coming. I think you're going to really love this. It's going to be coming here in the next couple of weeks, right in time for the holidays. So stay tuned for that. And there's some really cool things about taking dominion and fighting evil as well. And that brings us now to our guest today. But first, a word from our sponsors. And remember, support everybody that's supporting Patriot Radio and Patriot TV.
Hey, Patriot TV fans, feel like there's nothing on the radio for like-minded, intelligent people like yourself? Well, great news. Now you can stream Patriot TV on TuneIn during your drive to or from work. Whether you're stuck in traffic or cruising down the highway, you can catch every conversation from your favorite show hosts right in your car. No more mindless jibber-jabber. Tune in 24/7 on the road, at the gym, or wherever you are. Download the free TuneIn app now on Apple, Android, or your computer and never miss a beat. Patriot TV, now on TuneIn.
Now we have it. Kingdom Crunch.
It's important to start breakfast off with a power-packed punch. You want a complete amino acid score, good protein. If you turn the label over and look at the back of the box, there is no added sugars in either one of these flavors, either peanut butter or acai bowl.
Peanut butter has 11 grams of high-quality protein. Acai bowl has 8. Peanut butter has 11 grams of carbohydrate, acai bowl 12, and both of them have a good solid fat content at 6 grams. Very filling, very healthy.
You will be fueling yourself with high quality fuel, starting off the day right. You can even use Kingdom Crunch as a snack in the middle of the day if you just have a craving and you want to eat something that is good for you, it has a crunch, and doesn't have a lot of calories.
There you go. Diabetic friendly, keto friendly, paleo friendly, Kingdom Crunch, and
child friendly.
And we're back with our guest, Chad Stewart. He's the author of Britfield, Britfield.com. It's great to have you back on the show, Chad. We've really been looking forward to this interview. I hope you're doing well.
Doing well, thank you. Glad to be back on.
So I want to talk quickly about this push right now about artificial intelligence. You know, there are some good uses for it, but there's some sinister uses, and it seems like especially our enemies overseas and some of these countries that want communist and totalitarian rule across the world are really making leaps and bounds in this space, but a lot of people don't even understand it. What is AI, but more importantly, what are the dangers of it?
Yeah, and it's interesting because obviously I think I'm on because of book 4, Britfield and the Eastern Empire, which is kind of exciting. It's part of our Britfield series. And so while you have these fast-paced action-adventure series, we're bringing in these current issues. And one of them in book 4 is the dangers of AI. And it's actually the committee, this group behind the curtain, that's trying to control the stock markets and crash the entire financial system, wipe out trillions of dollars of wealth, and then introduce a one-world digital currency, which is really straight from the headlines, But it's interesting. AI has been around for a long time. I think it's twofold. One is it's the usual suspects that are pushing it as it's the next great thing, and again, too, it's really in many ways, in my opinion, it's sort of anti-God because God hasn't created us smart enough or the brain smart enough, or we're not intelligent enough to create. AI can do everything for us, and it's frankly a lie. Pretty much everything that comes out of them is a lie. And the one thing that AI can never duplicate is creativity. Now it creates. You see it creating pictures or paintings or music, but it's not creating anything out of nothing. It's plagiarizing. It's pulling from other resources that have already been created, and then throwing it on on a painting or into a book or something like that. And so one thing that AI will never replace is creativity. One thing that AI can never be is creative. But I think the thing is what's really behind it is it's the speed at which it can calculate things, if you will. And there are interesting aspects about it. But again, too, this technology has been around for 25, 50 years. They're just easing it out right now. It's interesting, too, now, if you do a Google search or something like that, and you plug something in, and it used to be just an answer or all kinds of things. Now they're saying, now they have a little bar up there that says AI, and it's like, oh, AI is telling you now and stuff. And I think it's dangerous. I think it's ridiculous. I think those that are pushing it, hooking their wagon onto it, are sort of digging their own grave. And it's interesting too because as technology advances. Just some stats, and I probably have said them before, but as technology advances in the next 5 to 7 years, 90% of all accountants will be out of work, 40 to 50% of all medical fields, including doctors and nurses, 40 to 50% of all lawyers, 50 to 60% of all media. And so it's like, is that really what you want? And to kind of encapsulate it, The Terminator is not a movie; it's a documentary. That's sort of their, and they always do that, and you know that, and you've talked about it on your program. Who controls Hollywood and who controls the film industry? And it's always this pre-programming, and they'll get the movies out there. Do you remember that one? I was thinking about it the other day with Tom Cruise and what was it called? It was like about 15 years ago, Spielberg movie, and it was where you were going to commit a crime.
Pre-crime. Yeah.
Yeah, and that was the name of it. But I'm just thinking, and it's just like that's kind of what they want to do. It's all about control. You were talking about it earlier on your program. It's so interesting too about daylight savings. Again, it's interesting when you're sort of outside the matrix and looking at all this stuff. I hate daylight savings. Again, the only reason it exists is another speed bump for people that throws everybody off twice a year, and they have to reset, recalculate for a week. We have all these and again too, it's like it should be 13 months, 28 days. They turned it into 12 months. They do all of this to disconnect, to take anything away from anything that's natural. You have all these holidays, and so it just throws the whole flow off. We're celebrating frickin' almost everything now, and it's just like, yeah, I mean, if I was in school, fantastic. I've got Monday off, you know what I mean, or Friday. But suddenly, now you only have a 4-day work week and 3 days of vacation or fiddling around doing nothing. And then the next time, it's like now 5 days is crammed into 4. All of this stuff, believe it or not, is designed to throw you off your rhythm, throw you off your momentum, all of it. And it's all about control. And it's a long answer for AI, and we can dig deeper into it. But I wouldn't pursue it. I mean, it's parts of it are inevitable. Some of it's out there, like anything. Some of it's useful. I mean, the very idea of the internet was created to control, and yet here we are doing a great interview. It's had a major reverse effect. The cell phone, while it was designed to encapsulate, unfortunately, everybody, I mean, it's like, and I remember that I was walking into Pete's Coffee about 8 years ago, and I was just like, I was kind of waiting for my coffee, and I looked around, and like 6 or 7 people like that were waiting, and it's like everyone is like just glued, and I'm like, what are you doctors waiting for results from the heart transplant you just did? I mean, what is so important? And again, all by design, right?
Yeah.
But there's aspects of the cell phone. I can be out anywhere, and I've got communication. I can pull something up. I can email. I can talk. It's an amazing device. So there's always two sides to the coin, no matter how thin it's sliced.
It was Minority Report, I think, is what you were thinking about. Yeah. And, we were just talking about, during the brief about the idea of debanking, and people, not because they've done anything illegal, but because they don't meet whatever criteria is out there. By the way, they're never told what that criteria is, and then suddenly they'll be debanked. And they're spied on. We're spied on. Our habits are there, and then they try to turn around with AI to get us to behave a certain way. I think that's where that gets nefarious, is where there's this overt and covert manipulation of people's behavior because they think they know us better than we know ourselves.
Yeah, and it's all control. I was just thinking about this the other day too, and it's like Twitter. You know what I mean? And it's just like it was never designed to be cool and interesting way of communicating. It was to make you into a babbling idiot. I'm no longer composing a wonderful sentence or composing a paragraph. I'm trying to tighten everything into 140 characters, et cetera, et cetera. Or Facebook. You know what I mean? And that was never designed or built by the usual suspects or the actors that are playing the role of the founders. It's all BS. It's a $500 million DARPA program, that we paid for, but all these things are set to design, to control, to make you fearful, to undermine you. And I was just thinking about this because, like in book 4, it's very interesting. Britfield and the Eastern Empire. We talk about quantum computers. We talk about quantum encryption, and we talk about the dangers of AI. And it's really kind of a great battle at the end. It's the perfect quote unquote AI system by the committee or the bad guys versus the intellects, the hackers, the patriots that are out there, and they frankly crack the system. They overwhelm it and they break it. And it's interesting too in Minority Report, if you remember, they had this sort of idea that they were going out there and they figured they could figure out someone that was going to commit a crime and then arrest them, before they committed it. And then at the end, if you remember, it was faulty and the whole system was off, and all these people that were arrested more than likely we never committed anything and stuff. And that's how all this stuff is. It's just complete nonsense. But in my book, we talk about, and coming back to what you're saying, we talk about social credit scoring. And that's really what you were talking about. That's the undercurrent. That's what they're trying to push right now. That's what they're rolling out in places like China, where I think there's, don't quote me on this, I think there's 2 CCTV cameras for every one person there.
That's insane. Yeah.
Yeah. And they monitor everything. Don't think that if you're wearing a mask, and we actually have this in book 4, we cover this stuff, which is really cool. I don't go in depth because it's not that type of book, but I touch on these subjects because I try to make the Britfield series as real as possible. And they're fun and they're exciting books. They're about family, friendship, courage. But I thread all this stuff in because they're taking place in current time and they're real events. But we talk about the dangers of social credit scoring. We pull the curtain. We talk about what it's like. And so basically you and I could be walking down the street, you know what I mean? Just read some newspaper article from some, nut job in the politics, and we're complaining. And I'm saying, that guy's ridiculous, or I'm not going to vote for him, or I'm going to this or that. And those cameras pick it up because they're voice activated. They actually have thermal capabilities. So even if I'm wearing a mask or a scarf or a hat with glasses, it can hear my voice pattern. It can my movement, and either in some cases your DNA makeup. There was a push for all that DNA. They wanted to collect all that information, just another way to have everything on you. And so all of a sudden I get home and suddenly my quote unquote score, it's not even a credit score anymore, it's a social score, goes from like 100 to 87, and then maybe I email somebody something and I said, I really didn't like that book, or I didn't like that. I don't like what the New York Times just said. Mm-hmm. I get tagged and my score goes down to 73. And that's how it works. And it monitors everything. And people need to understand, and some of this was covered in films, they always tell you what they're doing. Whether your television is on or off, it's monitoring and recording you. Whether your cell phone is on or off, it's recording you. Whether your laptop is on or off, it's recording you. They even have the smart, refrigerator now recording everything. So you got to be very, very careful. And it's all caught in a database. And that gets into quantum computers and the storage units, D-Wave computers out of Switzerland. We talk about that actually in book 4. Not in depth, but we cover it. And so it's all connected, so we're all connected. It's the hive mind, right?
And that's where I think that we need to go after the break. I'd like to talk about the idea of our money being tied into our behavior. I'd like to talk about some of the solutions. How do we fight against this? But also, address this idea that people come up and they'll say, I don't have anything to hide. Why do you have something to hide? Why are you using encrypted communications? It really is nothing about that. It's about pushing back on a system that seeks to control every single human being.
No one's really, at the end of the day. Sure.
At the end of the day. When we come back from the break, more with Chad Stewart, Britfield.com.
Attention patriotic businesses. Do you want to see your sales skyrocket by selling your products or services to like-minded patriots? Well, if you're an advertiser who embodies the timeless principles of freedom, liberty, and patriotism, look no further than Patriot TV. Our viewers are responsive, economically active patriots who are committed to supporting businesses like yours that align with their values. For more information on advertising on America's new network of proud American businesses, email us at advertise@patriot.tv.
I couldn't give anything a higher endorsement.
I would be remiss had I not include Cardio Miracle on my very short list of secrets.
It's the real deal. It's a real product. It's not another supplement.
I'm operating about 6 to 8 hours, and I've noticed that being on this Cardio Miracle has made a huge difference.
Since I started taking Cardio Miracle, about 8 months into it, the benefits have been fantastic.
If I get hungry, then I just have a Cardio Miracle.
Not only is it safe, but it's necessary to take Cardio Miracle to stay well.
This let me sleep, it's feeling with more energy, more get up and go, and it's all because of what this company does.
For me as a doctor, Cardio Miracle is a staple.
Cardio Miracle to me is hope in a glass.
To try Cardio Miracle for yourself and get a special fan discount, go to the host page right now and click the link for Cardio Miracle.
And we're back with my guest, Chad Stewart, Britfield.com, talking about the dangers of AI and kind of the things that are happening right now in the world. But one of the most concerning is tying our behavior to our money, this push for a central bank digital currency, although I think that's been fairly well mitigated by the election of Donald Trump. What is your thought on this going forward, and how can people be more resilient against these control mechanisms?
Sure. And I wanted to just kind of wrap up the AI aspect, although it's a broad subject, but it's like, so what do we do or what can you do? Stay away from it, stay off it. Don't utilize it. Don't use it. I know even some of my own Patriot friends are kind of still utilizing it to do stuff. And look, I mean, if it helps to expedite something quicker, but don't take away your creativity. Nothing is going to replace writing great compositions, great paragraphs, great paintings, doing your own research, all of that, So I just wanted to say it's like the best thing to do is to avoid it, to ignore it, and not hook your wagon to it like useful idiots out there. But no, the banking system is interesting. I think a lot of things have been happening behind the scenes, especially over the last 4 years and then the 4 years prior and in the banking system. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. But no, it is always a control grid. And that's why we're talking in Book 4, Britfield and the Eastern Empire. We're talking about this idea of introducing a one world digital currency. That is their sort of end goal. Everyone's tied into it. Your wealth is wiped out. So again, this would tie into social credit scoring. And suddenly, if I drop below 70 points, out of 100, and I'm at 69, and I go to use my credit card, or I can't. You know what I mean? It's been locked, and somehow, I don't know, you'll have to get it back to 70 or 73 points. When they say that about gold too, and I'm not an advisor, but I mean, gold is a precious metal. It'll always have extreme value. In many ways, it's completely undervalued right now. Gold, silver, precious metals. But this is the point. If you don't physically hold it or own it, you don't own it. If you don't physically hold it, there's the idea that I have gold futures, or I've got account. It's all paper. You want to actually hold it. And so I'm kind of answering a question about the monetary system. Cover your bets. Don't have all your eggs in one basket. It's always great to be using cash. It's always great to have cash. I do as much as I can. I don't try to get crazy with credit cards. I don't have just one bank account at one bank system in case something happens there. You got a couple of them, and you just spread out your investments. And so you've got balance and you've got cover. So
let's talk about communication. Gmail and a lot of these other emails are free for a reason. Sure. Just basic text message, free for a reason, because they're harvesting vast amounts of data to add to your digital self so that they can know exactly what you like, what your habits are when you wake up in the morning, all of these things to create a full picture so they can advertise and get you to change your behavior. What do we do about this system that really a lot of people feel like they can't, there's no way to get around it. There's no way to get off the internet. You have to have some footprint out there digitally. How do they navigate it?
Yeah, and how much do you really need? And
exactly.
Are we farther than we were 20 years ago? Are you happier than you were 20 years ago? Are you smarter than you were 20 years ago? And I'm not saying that you weren't in some ways and with technology, but it's just like, how much do you really need it, and versus being dependent on it? And I think you have to ask yourself the honest question. I can't, if I'm driving my car, I usually have my cell phone, but I put it in my glove box. I don't have it out. If I'm going in shopping, I don't need it with me, unless I'm waiting for an extremely important call. And if I was, I wouldn't be in the market. You see, and I can't stand, and people with these earpods, stop it. That is so bad for your brain. That is doing such terrible things for you. There's a reason it's called a pod. Think about Invasion of the Body Snatchers and pods, and they're walking around, and it's one beat away from the mark of the beast, and that's what it is. They're just getting. That's why they called on the credit card. They call it the chip. That's why you scan it, and even at Whole Foods now, they even have a palm print. They're just trying to get there, trying to get to that beast system, Revelations, and they're trying to get to the mark of the beast. They're trying to get to that technology. They already have the technology. They've had it for probably 25, 50 years. And so little by little, they're trying to eke you through that. And so don't be so reliant on technology. Don't be so reliant on your computer. And yeah, I mean, if you're using those systems, I use some of them. I got some private systems. It's always a balance with me. And so a little bit is good, or goes a long way, if you will. But with that said, yeah, they're monitoring everything. So know that. So if you're writing private emails, they have it. You've already agreed to it. And every time when they're updating their new thing, I mean, no one's going to sit there and read, 80 pages, of fine print or whatever it is. It's like, double speak. You know what I mean? It's just like, no, and in some cases, TikTok, which is again China, right? But they basically, when you sign on to that, they own everything, and you're seeing that. I was just doing an interview a couple days ago, and and they were having a problem with fake presentations of them doing interviews or presentations, and it was a digital type of profile of them, their voice, the whole thing. They have it all, so you got to be very, very careful, and it's already happening. I mean, again, I say this because it's like we're talking about it's current. This stuff's been around for 50 years. They just ease it out. I remember 15 years ago, there was a university and a professor came out, or the speaker, and it was like for 20 minutes or something. And, the whole image, he's standing in front of the podium. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
And then once he was done, he disappeared. The whole thing was just a digital image. Think Star Wars,
Yeah.
They have that technology. They've had it forever. And so it's scary. And so you got to be careful. Don't get sucked into it. A little goes a long way. If you're a parent, I mean, for crying out loud, at what age do you really need to give your kids cell phones? And do you give them just a cell phone for communication, or you give them the whole, iPhone where they can access things that they should be accessing? And that's what it's for. Or spending mindless hours on it. Stop it. Get them outside playing in the yard. Down at the park with friends. Spend time with them. Take them to museum. Take them to a fun show. Take them downtown and look at some of the architecture. Spend time with them playing board games. Believe it or not, the board game industry is a $2 billion industry and growing at 5 to 7% every year. Board games growing at 5 to 7% every year. Books, the book market coming back at a huge swing right now at 5 to 7%, at about 5% every year. So a lot of cool things that are happening that are, if you will, countering this. The ebooks, the whole push on ebooks. And I remember this like 7 or 8 years ago. The only reason the big push for that is because if everything's an ebook, guess what? They can change it. You know what I mean? So I have this whole collection of classics. Think Bible, I got my Bible as my ebook. And guess what? At 12:01 a.m. in the morning, someone goes in the back door and changes a couple lines or removes a couple of lines. That was what the push for the ebook. And I even knew Christian schools that weren't going to do a traditional library. They're going to do the ebook library. Idiots, sheep to the slaughter, if you will. Be smart. Do your research. But that ebook market's flatlined at about 6 to 8%. It's not going anywhere. Kids love the covers. They love the soft covers. They love the books. Adults love the books. We like to hold it. We like to read it. We like to own it. You don't really own it if it's an ebook, because guess what? They can take it away. I still like the DVDs or Blu-ray. You know what I mean? Because at least I own them. You could have all these downloaded digital movies, but if something goes wrong, or they say we don't like you, or someone quote unquote hacked your account, all that library is gone. Everything that I paid for is gone. So
I was raised with a physical library too. I have a physical library in my own house. Completely agree with you. Something we need to get back to. In the last 2 minutes that we have left, you alluded to earlier something I think that is a key part of this conversation, and that is that creativity is kind of core to our humanity. And really, AI has been killing creativity, but so have our schools in many respects. How do we restore creativity?
Yeah, and that's been our whole push. That's kind of one of the main pillars of the Britfield and Lost Crown series, starting with book 1, Britfield and Lost Crown, and then book 2 and book 3 and book 4. Now we're launching. We're in pre-production of the first of 7 major motion pictures, and we're trying to bring creativity back to the classroom. And what's saturating the market right now is really the fantasy, right? The witchcraft, the demigods, the superheroes, and it's done for 3 reasons. Disconnect kids from reality. Number 2, make them feel less than they are, right? If I was a superhero, if I just had superpowers, if I was just a witch. And number 3, really introduce a lot of dystopian and really bad agenda,
right.
Bad mojo into these things and stuff. So monitor what they do, spend time with them. Creativity, by the way, creativity is the number 1 most important skill set in the world. And that's based on research and facts. We are in a creative renaissance now. We've been in a decline for over 30 to 40 years, mostly through the educational system. There's been some great research out there that kids that were tested at 5 were scoring at 98% out of 100. So 98 out of 100 5-year-olds were little geniuses on a creativity test. They were tested again at 10, it dropped down to 30%. They were tested again at 15, it dropped down to 12%. All by design, make you stupid, not think outside the box, not be individual. All children are born creative. All children are born amazing. All children are born with extraordinary talents. Just nurture them, spend time with them, and just do creative exercises. And, where do you start? Start researching it. Look at some creative exercises. You can go to the BritfieldInstitute.org. That's our nonprofit. focused on bringing creativity back to the classroom. We have a lot of creativity stats on there. We have creativity exercises, all of it free. We give it away. So,
Chad Stewart, thanks for joining me on Patriot Radio today. Always love our conversations. Really appreciate the spurring and the encouraging to get back to the basics, and creativity is at core of our humanity. Really love what you're doing. Keep up the fight.
Thank you. Amen. That's good.
Chad Stewart, author of Britfield, Britfield.com, BritfieldInstitute.org, by the way, as well. This might be challenging you. So what can you do today? Well, one of the things is you can do encrypted communication. So there are a couple of email services that are out there. Tutanota, Proton Mail is probably the most popular, most used. Use encrypted email. Use encrypted text messaging. Now, with quantum encryption, and we didn't get into this today, there actually is a chat that mitigates, that is quantum resistant, and that is something called SimpleX Chat. So take a look at that. Use an encrypted text messaging system. Use an email that is encrypted as well. You don't need to give away your information. And if you think that what we're saying is outlandish, just say red wagon, red wagon, red wagon in front of your phone and see what happens in the next 48 hours. And if you don't get an ad for a red wagon. Bottom line is, we are responsible for taking ownership of our privacy. We're also responsible for passing on knowledge. And one of the ways that you can do that, and what I think is a fantastic and phenomenal idea, is have your own physical library of books. There's something about holding them, like Chad was talking about, in your hand. A physical Bible as well. And yes, I use the Bible on my phone, but I also have many physical Bibles as well. Because if the lights go out, we still need to be able to read, and all readers are leaders. At least they should be. And if you're not reading, maybe tonight's the night to start. Get your family, pull them around you. Start reading a book again. Playing a board game again. Because it's not about teaching people what to think. It's about teaching people how to think, and that starts in the home. This is Matt Shea. Thank you for joining me on Patriot Radio today. God bless all of you. He is making this generation the greatest one. Keep up the fight.